Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But Who the hell's giving? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and every day this week we have live programming, and all of it centered on the NFL Draft and our Chicago Bears. So the best way to stay on top of stuff is to subscribe to the channel. You'll get an alert on your device letting you know when we're going live, and you can join us for some fun every day this week, including into Saturday, covering all of day 3's picks on Saturday, and we'll have some guests along the way. Plus, Greg Gabriel is not only here today, he will be with you on Friday and Saturday as well. Greg, how are you?
I'm good. I'm tired thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm exhausted already. Yeah, it's a big week.
Funny, Aldo, is that, we go back 40 years. Nobody gave 2 shits about the draft.
I know.
And then ESPN got the idea, let's televise this thing. Now, they didn't televise the whole thing because back then the draft was on a Tuesday. It would start at 8:00 in the morning Eastern time,
right?
And we'd finish up at 2, 3 in the morning. Then when he got done with the draft, it was 12 rounds. Then you had to go try to sign the undrafted free agents. It was crazy. And then they went to 2 days and now 3 days. But when it was 1 day, that was just absolutely nuts.
The NFL network was running a series of documentaries covering the draft over the years. And one of my favorite episodes was when your good pal, Mel Kiper, criticized what the Indianapolis Colts was doing. And then Bill Tobin came out and said, who the hell is Mel Kiper anyway? Why should he be telling us who to pick?
It was funny. Bill Tobin was a friend, God rest his soul. He's a friend of mine too. Really liked Bill. But and when I got to know Bill, he was working here, but was really later on, he started working for Cincinnati. His son is the pseudo GM, doesn't have that title, but that's what he is. And I would run into Bill all the time. So, on the road. So we'd go out to lunch or go out to dinner or whatever. And he's just a really nice person, as is his brother, Vince, who coached here too, I think.
Yes.
And, but, he had the run-in with Mel. But you got to say this about, and I love Mel, because I've known Mel for literally over 40 years. And where'd we meet? We met at a scrimmage. Buffalo used to have a scrimmage with Cleveland in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, at Edinburgh State College, which I think is called just Edinburgh University now or something. But Edinburgh was like dead in the middle between Buffalo and Cleveland. And so it was a rookie scrimmage they'd have after the first week of camp. And Ernie, of course, he was the GM of Cleveland at that time. And Ernie was Mel's mentor. Okay. Ernie is a Baltimore guy. And so Ernie brought Mel to that scrimmage. He ended up sitting next to me that day for the scrimmage. And so that was probably 84, maybe 85, somewhere around in there. So I've known him a long time. And if it wasn't for him, all this nonsense we're doing now wouldn't even exist.
Probably would not. That is so true. We already got a great question. Our followers ask the best questions, and DL serves one up here that is perfect for the start of the show. Greg, what do you say to people that are insinuating that agents pay media people to pump up their players?
Number one, they don't pay them. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation. Most of your insiders, be it a Schefter, Ian Rappaport, they get a bulk of their info from agents.
Right.
So you'll see it. They'll have before anybody, Joe Schmo signs a lucrative contract with the Chicago Bears. Where'd they get it from? They didn't get it from Ryan Poles. They got it from the agent, because the agent, he'll send out a text to probably 2 or 3 of those insiders all at once to sign so-and-so. Because a lot of times you notice, like Schefter and Rappaport, they always mention not always, but a lot of times they'll mention the agent, give the agent a little plug. But it's just taken care of. Somebody said, well, Rappaport was talking about it. And Rappaport said, well, I get information for the agents. Where the hell do you think I get it?
That's right.
He said, yeah, I take care of them. Why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
That's how I get my information.
99% of the time, or maybe more than that, the team is not going to provide that kind of information.
Yeah. And when these guys started to come to the surface as these insiders, the local media were pissed because they were getting, they wanted the scoops and they weren't getting the scoops.
Right. Yeah. So that's perhaps what has led to speculation that the agents and these top insiders are getting some type of kickback. But primarily what the kickback is you're promoting me as an agent because I got the deal done. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And part of it, a lot of times the agent wants to use the deal as a bragging right, so he doesn't want his guy to take a lesser deal or a team friendly deal because he knows damn well that when they're going out trying to recruit clients, that another agent, well, look at that shitty deal he got so-and-so.
Exactly.
Why do you want to go with him? Because, that's these guys got to sell themselves to current players and college players. Some people, they just rather do the college guys. Having guys currently on rosters, current pros, it's probably, it's a tough negotiation, but it's probably an easier business than because it's a rat race trying to recruit the kids out of college. But at the same time, you got agents trying to steal your clients all the time.
Yeah. Greg, did you ever see the movie Jerry Maguire where Tom Cruise plays
an agent? There's a lot of BS in there, but there was some truth.
Okay. I was wondering how lifelike that was. I always got the impression it was, pretty, not totally accurate, but fairly accurate.
Well, it's a movie, so there's got to be some Hollywood in there, and there's got to be some truth. The same thing with draft day. Draft day was kind of stupid of what really goes on
oh my God, was it ever?
The actual draft day.
Yes. I've held that against the movie since I first saw it, but it is entertaining. Anytime it's on, I stop channel surfing and I watch it, but it is ridiculous that a trade would be made like that on draft day and then a second trade like that during the draft without consultation of your head coach. And it was just so implausible to me.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is well thought out of. I mentioned last week that we talked about when you start making calls. Generally, the draft Thursday, today's Monday. Most calls will start being made now. Sure, there could have been some, but again, you're not making a hard deal unless you're trying to get to 2 or 1, and where the team might do that. But the Bears could call and just say, and I've said this before, be it trade up or trade down, hey, we might be looking to move up, just wanted to let you know, or vice versa. Hey, we don't think we're going to get the guy we want. Just, and if that's the case, we're willing to move down if you want to come up. Just want to let you know, give me a call if you're interested. And that's all you do. You leave the door open.
Exactly. All right, Levante is asking the big time question here. Greg, are all NFL draft boards set today or later this week, closer to the draft?
They should be done now. If they're not, I mean, I can't speak for 32 teams, but most are. And especially with the Bears, they got mini camp going on now. So that's taking up your morning, or maybe, and I don't know how much meeting time the coaches have, and then after that you'll get into draft prep. But the scouts were probably off for the weekend, went home to see their families, came back. They probably getting in there sometime this morning. Didn't necessarily have to be back by 8 o'clock this morning, I would think. And then, but now what you're doing is it's more game planning as to not really changing the board, but fine tuning ideas, what you want to do, getting into the area of what we actually trying to accomplish. And those types of things. Jerry wanted our board always done at least 4 days ahead of time, so he'd have time to make a lot of calls, and I'd have time to make calls, and then we'd kind of brainstorm with that, and then at the same time, that's when we put these little packages together that we put on his grease board in his office, and then we'd fiddle around with them, and then we'd bring them out to the scouts and say, which ones do you like? This draft, hard to do. I mean, it really was, because I've thought about it, because we talked about maybe doing it here, and it's only because of the thing. There is no, after the top 7 or 8, there is no consensus. I talked to a guy this morning, and it's like he's heard guys that are, and this guy's tuned in pretty good, that could go in late first, and I'm hearing third. And so it's like, okay. And I'm not doubting him, because it's very, very possible. You just don't know. And then, what I'm trying to find out now, and I got a call tonight with a guy, is the character stuff and medical stuff on guys that, interesting, Green. Is that a red flag or a yellow flag? Pierce, is it a red flag or a yellow flag? The defensive tackle from Mississippi, is it a red flag or a yellow flag? These types of things.
Gotcha.
Colston Loveland, how, he had AC reconstruction surgery. And I'll tell you this story. I had never heard that. I've had 2 AC surgeries, back in college. And what they did, I mean, that was 50 freaking years ago. Okay, so, and what they did then, they don't do now. Now, the first time I separated my shoulder was like my second game of this one season, and I played the rest of the season. It just hurt like hell. But it's not like it was my right shoulder, not like I had a throw, but but I couldn't do much as a receiver because it really hurt like hell to go like that. And it's not like they were giving us shots at a small school to take care of the pain and stuff. That wasn't in the budget. But anyway, at the end of the season, I had a surgery, and back then the first thing they do was put a pin in and pin it together. The pin was in like 8 weeks. And then you'd go in and you just had a local, and they, gave me a shot in here, did a local, almost took like a screwdriver, unscrewed the pin, and stitched it up, and you were done. It was like a 20-minute procedure.
Wow.
Well, 2 years later, I did it again. And so this time they did what they call a resection that they don't do anymore. And they literally cut off the tip of my clavicle where it meets the scapula. Okay.
Gotcha.
So now
Wow.
it's like floating right now.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So this is like 1974, 75, something like that. So 50 years ago.
Wow.
I have never had a problem with my shoulder since. Full range of motion, full mobility, everything, can do everything I want to do. Probably can't throw a baseball as hard as I used to be able to throw a baseball, but that's about the only thing. So, but again, it's not a thing that they do now. A lot of times with separations, they just let it kind of heal on its own. So I sent a text to an orthopedic I know, and I said, I've never heard of this before. And I explained my thing. I said, this is what happened to me, and I know you don't do that anymore. So I said, what, is this a serious thing? And he said, well, is it a quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, not a quarterback. He goes, because I wouldn't advise it for a quarterback. And then he goes, like, it's a serious surgery, and it's a 6-month rehab. So Loveland had this surgery middle of January or something. So he's going to be given good to go, supposedly, and you know how, can go either way, faster or slower, right about the time camp starts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and maybe you go to Karan Amagaji. Doctors thought he'd be ready for camp. Turned out he wasn't ready until 2 weeks into the season. So, whoever takes him has got to have a green light on the medical of when he, now, in relation to an offensive, a tight end can miss camp or part of camp and be able to be a productive player and step in. Why? Because you're still doing 7 on 7, and those types of things every day in practice. But with an offensive lineman, you miss camp, you're dead in the water because it's all the contact stuff, the technique work and stuff that you need to have contact with the defensive lineman, and you don't have that in camp, but you do with the receivers in the defense running routes and that type of thing. So entirely different situation because of the position.
Yeah. We got tons and tons of questions. I promise we're going to get to all of them or most of them. So stand by. I'll flash those questions up. But to continue to Greg's point, this was a new offensive line coach, Dan Roushar, talking about Karan Amagaji and basically making the same point that Greg just made about offensive linemen missing time.
I think he's got a lot of potential. And I don't think it's fair to evaluate on anything that he did last year based on the fact there was no OTAs, there was no training camp. You're talking about a guy going in and getting healthy, week 3, whatever it was. And then to begin that process and then, hey, little repetitions, very little fundamental work, and now, hey, go play. I'm excited about where he can go. I think the guy's got some lower power traits that you really get encouraged about. You see the length, you see the athleticism. We've got to bring his confidence along. And look, it's the building blocks, the foundation of any good fundamental play. It starts in his lower, and it'll move forward.
Thank you, CHSN, for that clip. And Greg, aside from him echoing what you just said, anything stand out to you about what he said? Because when he said instill confidence in Karan, I wonder if that could be an issue. Did you get anything out of that?
No, I think it's he had some tough plays in that game. He had some good plays too, but he goes against one of the best pass rushers in football in that Minnesota game and gets taken down a few times. And so could there be a lack of confidence? Yeah. But I looked at it more this way, Aldo. It's that just confidence in himself with what he's doing from knowledge, from being coached.
Right.
And that's what practice will do. Now, even though there's no contact in these 3 days of mini camp, that coach is going to know a lot more about Karan Amagaji Wednesday night than he does right now. And that'll help. But the one thing I got, and you tell me if you think he talked about Karan, he talked about Braxton, and his voice picked up a little bit. There was some excitement in his voice. And it's like, I really like these guys. And he flat right out said that about Braxton. And he said what I said. He gets too tall. He's got to sink his hips better. Those are coaching points. Those aren't points that he's not able to do it. It's you make him concentrate on doing it. Now, then he talks about Campbell. Somebody said about arm length. And he was more, again, now if you thought it was different, you tell me. I'm looking, he's talking matter of fact like you would about a draft choice. Not that, I got to have this guy. But he seemed enthused about the other guys.
Yes, he did.
Now, am I wrong in saying that? Or you tell me.
I got the same sense, absolutely got the same sense of his comments on Braxton Jones, the hope for Karan Abagaje.
Do you have the Braxton Jones cut?
I don't think so. I got this one. He was talking about the importance of the interior offensive line. Let's listen to that because that Braxton Jones comment might be included in this. It's a minute and a half. Stand by.
I think it's inside out. I think that's the shortest, most direct path to the quarterback. You begin there. It's your ability to run the football internally. So center and guard play is obviously valued. But we also recognize that if we're deficient on the outside at the tackle positions, we're not as strong as we have to be. You can help tackles a little bit more than you can help inside play with some of your things that you do in your protections. But at the end of the day, we would like to be solid across the board, actually elite across the board, all five guys.
Yeah, like in what ways can that specifically really help a young quarterback?
Well, think about it. Right now, you give the guy the ability to step into the pocket, not out of the pocket. If it's not coming at me directly, and we dealt with this with Drew in New Orleans, very similar in stature with Caleb. The ability to step up, see the field, get the ball out, that's valued. And if I've got people to step away from or move because of penetration, edges, that becomes even more challenging for any quarterback.
Sorry, Greg. That's obviously that's not the Braxton one. But what he said there is worthy of comment.
Yeah, number one, I really like this guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
too.
he is the way he explains things is very good. I like his demeanor. I can see why players really like him.
Mm-hmm.
You know who Brandon Thorne is? Okay.
Yeah, excellent.
Brandon is, he's not in the league. I think he writes for the Bleacher Report or something, but he is considered an offensive line expert. Mm-hmm. Does a lot of stuff with Duke Manyweather as far as when he has his summer camps and stuff. So he's well respected and a good guy. This goes back maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He had Roushar as the second or third best offensive line coach in the NFL.
Nice. That's a good source.
Then that staff broke up and he went to Tulane. So maybe it was 4 years ago. But the guys, when you look at the lines he had, and now he had good players, but part of that is he developed those good players.
Yeah. I wish I had that Braxton Jones clip. You saw it, you heard it. And you heard his remarks about Karan Amagaje. Did you get the sense that the Bears might be targeting a tackle? I got the sense that they're not.
I still believe they are going to take an offensive lineman fairly high. Mm-hmm. I think now, again, I'm saying this and it's just who knows what's true, because nobody knows what's true
Right.
right now. I think they want people to think that's what they are going to do, but not necessarily what they are going to do. Now, I also think that if Genty is there, they're going to take him. But I don't think they will move. I don't think they will move up to get him.
Okay, so you
Like
think
Schefter said today in this thing that it was on, ESPN Plus, but Swifty put it out on his thing. The quote, "I won't pay 10 cents for ESPN Plus, so I'm not going to pay the $95 to get it or whatever it is."
Yeah.
But he said the Bears are praying that Genty falls to them. I don't think they're praying.
Yeah.
That's anyway. The Pope's gone, so who are you going to pray to? I mean,
That's right. But so you think if Genty falls to 10, the Bears will definitely choose him?
I think if any of those blue players fall to 10, they'll take them.
All right. So even Travis Hunter.
The only one I have a maybe on is Jalen Walker.
Okay.
Because I just don't know the fit. I know the guy's a player, but I'm hearing two teams way ahead of the Bears really like him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The team that's got the question mark is Jacksonville, because you got to throw out anything they did in the past.
Mm-hmm.
They got a brand new GM, and the GM is not really known as an evaluator. He's an analytics guy.
Right.
And he was Les Snead's draft analytics guy. He really had Les's ear.
Mm-hmm.
And he would put together these things that this guy, based on this, and this guy has the best chance of having a successful career. Mm-hmm. Now, LA, without having a lot of top picks, done a pretty good job drafting.
Sure have.
And this guy has, been there. He was there for 8 or 9 years. He's a young guy. He's in his early 30s. Mm-hmm. But just knowing what his history is, you could, who's going to be their pick? I mean, people put Graham there. I mean, that's a maybe. People put Warren there. I think analytically Warren would jump up. But now just recently, a couple of people say, don't count out Genty to Jacksonville. And now everybody's got Genty going to the Raiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't count out Genty going to Jacksonville. Now, if that was the case, then, the Raiders, they got their left tackle wants more money. Now that'll, we always see those things always find a way of getting worked out, but they may think they got to get another lineman just in case. Well, you just don't
know. You just don't know. There's 32 secrets being held right now, and that's everyone that owns a first round draft pick.
So that earlier today, I said, pre-draft, listening to pre-draft pressers is an exercise in futility because they don't tell you a damn thing. And then I told them, I said, there's only one person I ever been around that ever told the truth. That's the late John Butler.
Okay.
And when he was at Buffalo and at San Diego, he'd always tell the truth. And they never believed him. Well, he told the truth last year, but he's got to be lying now. And he just, and I said, I go, John, you always tell them right. He goes, I know. He goes, because they think I'm lying. And he says, as long as I can get away with it, I'll tell them. I don't care.
I love it. That is great. All right. We're going to get to those questions momentarily. I got one other topic I want to bring up with Greg here early part of the show, and that is Kyler Gordon was signed to a contract extension. This is Dennis Allen talking about the versatility that Kyler could offer this team and Kyler's remarks on that subject.
And we'll figure out where that second position, that where he can go and compete, and hopefully we can find some more playing time for him.
Do you have a sense of whether he'd be a better outside corner or safety?
Yeah, he's played more outside corner, so obviously that would be the comfort level. But some of the things that I see him do and the way that he fits in the run game tells me that he could be a fit, at safety also. So, and look, we've had guys that have had the flexibility to play a lot of different positions. I think that's important in today's football, where you're not just locked into one thing, being able to be multiple and do a lot of different things. And so that's something that I think he can do.
I feel like in this defense, I feel like I get to, be versatile how I am and, kind of mix around with whatever. So I feel like really seeing me do whatever. I feel like there's not really no limit to my possibilities. So I'm just kind of excited to see what he cooks up and what his plan is.
Greg, at the top of the show, every time we go on, as part of the open, you talk about Kyler Gordon's efficiency at the slot cornerback position because he can't play kind of like a linebacker type. He's so good and strong. So now they're talking about maybe moving him outside for some plays, maybe moving him to the safety for some plays. What do you make of that?
Okay. One thing I think of right off the top, and I thought of this last week when he said it, is, okay, in Flus's defense, that nickel was a starter. He was playing 80 to 85% of the snaps every game. They seldom played a Sam linebacker, so he was in there a lot. Now, I don't know what Dennis does as far as using that fifth defensive back. Mm-hmm. So I know Kyler's teammate at Washington, who the Chiefs took in the first round, just a little bit ahead of when the Bears took Kyler. He plays outside on base downs and inside when they go into nickel. Could they do the same thing with him? Sure, why not? It really just depends on how he is going to scheme the defense, and some of that stuff, they're doing on the fly, because reality is today's the first day, even though the offseason program's been going on for 2 weeks. You weren't allowed until today to go on the field with the players. Everything's been in the classroom, and anything the players did outside was conditioning, not working with the coach. You worked with the coach in the classroom, learning. So today's the first day. So now they're going to put together, from now until the middle of June, they're working with these guys 4 days a week. And then it's kind of figure out, okay, what part fits where and how are we going to use them? And it's going to be interesting because I posted this morning too. Some of this, it's not going to have a drastic effect on the draft, but it could have some effect on what they do in the draft based on what they come away with as far as certain players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I took away two things. One is this could be a message to Tyreek Stevenson. You need to improve your self-discipline and be totally present on every single play. If not, Kyler Gordon is going to steal some of your snaps. The other thing that I took out of it is the safety position, and we've been getting questions on this, Greg, that I'll pose to you. The safety position is a bit precarious because you've got a 32-year-old Kevin Byard, and you've got Jaquan Brisker, who has suffered multiple injuries. So a backup plan could be Kyler Gordon.
Obviously. I mean, you want him to learn. The only thing is I can't see is have him being a starting safety and then be your nickel, because that just wouldn't make sense.
That is weird.
Because then you're bringing in your number 3 safety as soon as he goes to nickel. And if Allen plays as much nickel as a lot of other coaches do in the league, then why would you even do the safety? I think it's more of a, can we use him back there if there's an injury and we gotta do it? But then if that's the case too, you got to have a guy who can be the backup nickel.
Indeed, exactly. And I don't know if they have someone in the roster.
Blackman is one of the guys.
Josh Blackman is it or Josh Blackwell, is it? Anyway.
Might be Blackwell.
All right, so let's get to some of the questions. First of all, one from far back, Chris Watts has this interesting question. When you were with the Giants, Greg, did you ever lose a player to the Chicago Bears that you were scouting and said, "Oh, darn it, the Bears snatched him"?
During the draft?
Yeah, I think that's what he means.
In all honesty, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
We lost a player in free agency, the punter, 2 months before I came here. Brad Maynard.
Oh, okay.
Brad Nader was a free agent. We drafted him in New York, 3rd round. Real good punter in New York. And then the Bears signed him in free agency. And a couple months later, Jerry and I were here. So I was, I was with Brad his whole career between New York and here.
That's wild. That is wild.
I remember sitting in the draft room when, so it's the 85 draft and the Bears drafted the Fridge. And there was a lot of people that didn't think he was going to go in the first. We did not have a first round grade on him in New York. But so there was like a whoa. But, since then and now, I mean, I've had a doctorate in this stuff compared to what I knew then and what I know now. And it's just, everybody rates somebody different. But it's crazy. Fridge was this big, monstrous guy. Right now he's just another average lineman.
Yep. Heck, he miss a meal, he'd be a fullback. He was like 305,
there's a lot of guys playing in the league that are a lot bigger than the Fridge.
Yeah, crazy. Times have changed. Derek asks, if the Bears traded down, do you see a scenario where they could consider drafting Nick Emmanwori?
The way this draft, I'm going to try to answer this, Derek, the best I can. The way this draft is, with everybody similar, they could draft down, say, trade down 4 spots and take that guy, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yep.
Could also pass on him. I mean, it's who do they like? Who do they like better? He's not, doesn't have the girth that Allen seems to like, but Allen's had some smaller guys too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't give you an honest answer. I really like the player. No, I like about him. I mean, on top, he's productive as hell. He's got a lot of length to him. He can get bigger. I like Pierce a lot, and that's one of the guys I'm trying to find out about today. I did talk to one person today and said, well, he can have his outbursts at times and in practice and in meetings and stuff. And, he's a little different. And it goes back to what one guy told me, he's like a wild horse that doesn't want to get broke.
Yeah.
Well, that all kind of fits together, but does that mean you wouldn't take him? And if you got a good locker room, see, that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
People can say, oh, the Bears should have taken Jalen Carter. No, they should not have. They did not have the locker room that could handle Jalen Carter when he was coming into the league. They may still not. I think with Jarrett and Sweat and Billings does a lot better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the time, as good as he's turned out in Philly, they had a great defensive line. Fletcher, Koch, they had Graham, and some other guys along that defensive line. They could hold Carter accountable.
Mm.
And that's what your veterans in your position group got to do. Bears didn't have that guy. We saw that last year. It was crazy. 8 captains or something like this, and guys doing social media all over. And there was just no, even though there's some strong personality, there was no real accountability within the locker room and somebody running that locker room like an Olin Kreutz used to run the locker room.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I think you mistakenly said cornerback with Nick Emanuori. People are saying he is a safety, and he indeed, of course, is.
Oh, Emanuori. Oh, wait, I was thinking of the edge from Boston College.
Yes. Gosh,
Which is
help me, Jack.
Emanuori, the safety. I don't see. Number one, he didn't visit, as far as I know.
Okay.
I just don't see it. Here's the thing with safety. First of all, it's not a premium position unless the player is really, really special. He's really good. I don't know if I'd call him special, but he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And where he's good is the closer. He's like Brisker, but probably better than Brisker was coming out, especially the closer he gets to the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's as good as Brisker is in coverage. But the key to me is we got to get a safety. And everybody said, because they don't have anybody next year. Well, you know what? You worry about next year. And the other thing is, if they were that worried, why didn't they sign somebody in free agency?
Well, potentially.
And there were some good safeties out there.
And there still are, though, Greg. That's the thing is, safeties typically in free agency are the last players to go,
But there were good guys that were getting good players that were getting 1-year deals 3 to 4 weeks into free agency.
Yeah, and I'd have to look at the free agency list now to say with certainty that there's still a good crop of safeties available. But year after year, it seems like safeties, a lot of teams wait till after the draft.
It's not a premium position.
Right. I did present a scenario on my Tuesday night show, Bare Their Souls, where the Bears could potentially trade out of the first round and choose Nick Emanuori early in round 2. And my justification was for that is that you actually gave me the idea when you said the Bears are looking for more speed at the linebacker position. So I was thinking because of Dennis Allen's penchant for playing 3 safeties is you bring Emanuori onto the team, and with his speed and his ability to get into the offensive backfield to help stop that running game for opposing teams, he could potentially be a fit for Dennis Allen. Now, once I presented that idea, I got laughed at and people shaking their finger at me.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Number one, I think Emanuori goes
first round.
Yeah, DJ's in his latest top 50 has him as 15. The guy I was mistakenly thinking of was
Donovan Ezaraku.
Yes,
50.
And he's got Ezaraku at 25. I get what you're saying, Aldo. I just, and do they take a safety at some point? Yeah, but history says you take safeties on day 3 and they turn out pretty damn good.
That's right. That is right. So that's why I'm not too worried that they have not added to the safety room yet. Somebody is asking, have we heard the Josh Simmons news? I did a quick look on Google. No, have not heard anything. So if you've got something, let us know what it is and your source, please. All right, let's get to some more questions here. We've got D. Levine is asking if Genty falls to us. I could see teams wanting to trade up for him. I got the same feeling. This guy could be a very valuable trade commodity if he drops to 10.
Okay, I'll if he's still there at 8 or 9, and other teams are convinced that that's who the Bears are going to take at 10, especially looking at Schefter saying, well, they're praying. So that tells me, if I'm Dallas, well, if I want Genty, I got to get above Chicago. So
I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
See, some people think, well, if he gets by Oakland, he's automatically getting to the Bears. That is, don't think that way, because the team can easily jump up. And if you got a love affair for a player, you will do what it takes to get that player.
Well, and the big part of Genty falling to 10 is how many quarterbacks are chosen before 10? As Squeegee asked the question, how many quarterbacks go before pick 10? If 2 or 3 go, then there's a good chance Genty could fall.
You know what? The more I think of it, and I hope I'm wrong because I'd like to see more, I think 1 goes.
That's it, huh?
That's it. I think that the Giants, put it this way, if the Giants pass on Sanders, he isn't going in the top 10. I can't see the Saints doing it. Obviously they could. I mean, but there's too many variables that say, no, that's not in the realm of possibility. And the Giants and others have been doing a lot of work on that next tier of quarterbacks, and maybe even a guy that you can come back into the later part of the first and get if you have to. So it's, hey, do I know for sure? Hell no. Nobody does. I mean, who would have thought 3 days before the draft that a half a dozen quarterbacks were going in the first 12 picks last year?
Exactly.
Okay, because we did this show on Monday before the draft, and did anybody think that was going to happen? Hell no.
Could, the Saints, of course, in need of a quarterback with news that their car is injured and may miss the start of the season. Can you see Dart going to the Saints at 9? There are a lot of people who love him, and even this kid Tyler Sloth now is gaining a lot of more mentions.
I haven't done anything on the Louisville quarterback first, so I don't know much about him. I like Dart, and I like his demeanor. I like his brain. I like Lane Kiffin. I like the offense that Lane runs. This guy's had to throw the ball a lot. I don't know if I see a big difference between him and, say, Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
Except Bo Nix played 5 or 6 years of college football. So, yeah, anything's possible. Nothing would surprise me in this draft. If 3 went in the top 10, it wouldn't shock me. If 1 goes in the top 10, it wouldn't shock me. I keep getting asked, well, who's your favorite for the Bears? I don't have one. I don't know who's there. And I know if it's me sitting in that room, I'm trying like hell to get out of the pick unless one of those Blues are there. I'm taking one of those guys. If not, then I'd rather be down a little bit and pick up another day 2 player.
Yeah, I'm with you. D. Levine asked a question that I think most of us know the answer to. This is scouts bring the info to the table, but who has more say when making picks, the GM or the coach? It's usually the GM.
It's in his contract.
But let me expand on this question. Do you see a head coach like Ben Johnson having a bigger influence on Ben Johnson than on Ryan Post than most head coaches have on their GM? I think a lot of fans are praying for that.
You know what? Impossible to say.
Yeah.
What's their relationship? Okay. First year coach, first draft. So I can go back to 2004, Lovey. And we had to throw off the defensive line. We kept 1 defensive lineman from the year before, Alex Brown. We got rid of all the elephants. And, so now it was imperative that we start finding some players that could play the 3 and the 1 and that thing. And we drafted 1, 2. We took 3 technique guys, and Tank could play the 1 or the 3. So, yeah, but a part of it was not just Lovey, but it's the way the draft worked. I think we had the 13th pick that year, if I'm not mistaken, and we got the very first defensive lineman off the board, which never happens. Go look at the last 20 drafts and see how many times the first defensive lineman goes at 13.
Interesting. You did that research, yeah.
And it was just crazy that happened. And we lucked out. Simple as can be. And Tank had issues, so we knew we were pretty safe on Tank.
Got a question here from Chris, and you've actually talked about this topic before, but let's add more complexion to it. With the lack of high talented quarterbacks, does this mean fewer teams will want to move up? Is it less teams, fewer teams? I don't know grammatically what's correct, but
okay. I can only go with my experience in drafts like this. And my experience says, now I don't see many, if any, trades say in the top 8, 9. I think then when you get into the teens, or say starting 9 or 10, where the Bears sitting at into the teens, and I wouldn't shock me if there's 4 or 5 or 6, because what happens is, I've explained a lot of times, no two boards are alike. Everybody's got their players ranked the way they are, and they're sitting here, it's Monday, and they've got a certain few players that they want. So now it's, how do I get them? And then you start to see, now what everybody does is they've got, and usually the pro department does it, they got it listed for every team what they think the major needs are at what position, not putting a player in there. So that, when you start doing that, then you start thinking, well, if I want so and so, you could use Genty for an example. If Genty falls, and let's say there was a lot of people that tied Dallas to him too, that would really like him if they could get him. So if he's there at 8, would Dallas try to get him at 8 or 9 so the Bears don't get him at 10? Feasible. Why wouldn't it? Yeah. And then, okay, so then say Warren's gone. And so somebody might say, well, that means if the Bears were going to take, they like Warren a lot, and, could they like Loveland just as much? And I want Loveland. Now, supposedly the Colts do. I don't know if that's true or not, and it's a big need for him. So the Colts are at 14. Do the Colts try to get him in front of the Bears to try to get Loveland? So that's how these things work. And so it depends on the love affair that a team has for a particular player. Excuse me.
Yeah. Kay offers an interesting point here. It's got to be really hard for Ben Johnson. I mean, to find time to watch college film when he's installing a new culture, getting all his coaches together, working on ideas for the playbook, and on, the responsibilities that guy has.
Seen his eyes lately?
Exactly. A man in dire need of some sleep.
You know what's funny is I told you I got up at 4:00 this morning. And the first thing I thought of is, I bet you that some bitch is already in the office.
Absolutely. Or maybe slept there on Easter Sunday night.
Did you see that heater he threw, though, at the Cubs game?
Cliff Victoria was just mentioning that in the chat, and I did not see that.
Actually, he threw a sinker. And it's like, you could tell he's been a pitcher in baseball before in his life.
He likes baseball a lot. There's no doubt about it. He's a big Cubs fan.
I mean, he did most of the time, it's hard for the guy who throws out the first pitch to get it to the catcher.
That's right.
I would say this thing probably had about 88 mile an hour type pitch. And it was a sinker where it came in from the left and then dropped down right before. I mean, it was a really nice pitch.
Love it. Love it. All right. Maybe he can bring some luck to our baseball teams here in town. Donald Gooch asks, if the Bears draft a running back in the first round, what does Greg think will be the positions the Bears target in round 2?
Well, we know what the needs are. Depth on the offensive line, a defensive tackle, a defensive end, maybe another wideout. I mean, I don't see a wideout on, at least in the first 2 rounds. There's one wideout I know they've paid a lot of attention to, and that's Kyle Williams from Washington State. So if he was there in the 3rd, or that Noel from Iowa State in the 3rd, I mean, those are possibilities. I can't say that, it's a lock. That's what's going to be fun when we're doing this on Friday morning, because we'll know, okay, what's off the board. and they're picking 7 and 9
Very high.
in the second round. And so then we'll be able to see, like, if they take a defensive lineman, say at 10, or if they trade down, then you can figure that there's a good chance they're going to take a running back with one of those 2 picks. And maybe an offensive lineman there, because that's really in my opinion, the value of the offensive line is better. Value for the pick you're taking them is better in the second round, or even at the top of the third, than it is at the first.
Yeah. Could they be saying at Hallisall, if we're going to draft a running back, if we're out of the Genty and Omarion Hampton and those blue chip minus type players, we want a bruising back to complement what DeAndre Swift does. And if that's the case, you got guys like Cam Scadaboo who could be available in the third round. Taj,
I think that's too high for him. I'm not, I'm going to be sacrilegious with a lot of Bears fans. I'm not a Scadaboo fan. And one thing Scadaboo cannot do is run. He ran 4.65. Okay. So, and you got a head coach that is in love with the stopwatch. Yes, he is a good player. He's tough. He's nasty. You're glad you like him. I'm not touching him before 5th round. And maybe, look at where some of these backs go in normal years. So, if it's me and I watched more tape over the weekend and at the end of last week, I'd rather have either of the Ohio State backs than Hampton. Myself.
I think that's fascinating because I love Hampton. Those 2 Ohio State backs, and you've been saying that for months, well into the college football season, how much you like those guys. But Hampton, to me, seems like a blue chip minus guy, and maybe bordering on blue chip. Well, definitely bordering on blue chip.
Well, here's why I said it. And when I started watching, and I think like 4 or 5 times I saw him get caught. And yet he ran a 4.46 or something.
Yeah.
Well, 4.46 shouldn't get caught.
Yeah.
And so that means, I know how good he is. And I had a first round grade on him. But don't forget, Genty was the back at Boise State. Hampton was the back at North Carolina. Now you go to Ohio State and you had 2 number 1 backs.
Yeah. So
got to split time. Put either of those guys at North Carolina or Boise. What do you think they do?
Nothing.
No, you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
So it's and don't forget now, Genty only played 2, maybe 3 P4 schools all last year.
Yeah.
All the rest were G5.
Yeah.
And Penn State, and Penn State playoff game, he didn't do anything until the 4th quarter when the game was already over.
Right. They held them in the first half. Absolutely.
Yeah. And they went in to stop them, and they stopped them. So, and I'm not taking anything away. If he's there, yeah, you want to take him. But how much of a drop off is there between those guys? To me, I think, if those 2 guys from Ohio State are at Boise and get the situation that Genty had, they run for 2,000 yards too.
Yeah. All right. So let me get back to Scadaboo just for a second here, because the chat room is divided. A lot of people agree with you, 5th, 6th round type prospect. Other people, Swifty says that Scadaboo is growing on him. I say to you, he ran the same 40 that David Montgomery ran. And David Montgomery, we knew what he was. He was a guy that can bounce off tacklers and pick up tough extra yards. And it worked in Chicago. It worked in Detroit with Montgomery. Why can't we like Scadaboo for the same qualities we like Montgomery?
Okay, I'll answer it this way. You watch the tape and you always put a estimated speed on a guy. What's his play speed? I thought Monty was going to run faster than he timed.
Mm-hmm.
Scadaboo ran what I thought he was going to run. He doesn't play fast. You know, I give you everything he is. He is a tough SOB. You know, he's a complimentary back. Do you want him as your number one? Not me. I don't. Now, that doesn't mean there's a coach out there that disagrees, and that's fine. But, you know, one thing about evaluation, it's a very subjective business. So, and you got disagreements within each draft room in the league, let alone team to team.
Yeah.
There's always differences of opinion. No two scouts, you know, you might have 6 grades on a guy and all 6 of them are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be that way. I mean, you said that you wanted your scouts to disagree and challenge each other and so forth. That's the way you get to the best decision.
I just think that, you know, just watching, like after the Texas workout, it's reported the Bears spent an inordinate amount of time with their running back Blue, who just happens to be real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then there's another thing. They like the SMU back, who just happens to be real fast. Everybody that they've seen to gravitate towards can run. And then you got Scadaboo, who's a freaking Clydesdale.
That's well put.
Okay, so, you know, do you want Secretariat or the Budweiser, you know, horse that pulls the cart?
I want them both. Because you're gonna need both, you know, and so that's where I'm headed with, you know, if
people are caught up with this, oh, you got to have a thing like Montgomery and Gibbs. No, you
Thunder
don't.
and Lightning.
You don't have to have that though. But you want a rotation, so you're not killing one guy.
Right. You're going to dress 3 running backs on game day. You'd like to have one of those 3 running backs be able to pick up, to pound at the goal line, you know, at 4th and 1, what have you, whatever.
Well, I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Roschon Johnson.
Yeah, and I'm not either. But, you know, this team is being built on competition and depth. So KQ says right on cue here, Roschon will be much better this year with a better line. I don't disagree with that. Is he going to stay healthy?
Swift is going to be a lot better with a better line.
I would agree.
And Swift ran for, you know, just under 1,000 yards. The last 2 years, Swift has averaged 1,000 yards between Philly and here.
You agree with this? Scadaboo equals Curtis Enos?
No. Curtis Enos could run faster.
Yeah, I didn't see that either. Dr. Truth asked, the biggest question with Scadaboo, is he willing to listen to his coaches? And that means limiting contact in the NFL. He's got a tendency to lower his head. He has suffered multiple concussions, so he comes with a Surgeon General warning on him.
Well, I mean, if he's had multiple concussions and stuff, then you know the doctors know that when they get to the combine,
I hope so.
And they might have done some scans, and that becomes a medical decision. That comes out that's out of the coach's hands, and then the medical department either red flags the guy or doesn't. And you know, we're never really going to know that unless it's somebody who, like I say, one of the calls I got tonight is a guy that will have that info. But I also know that with medical information, it's like scouting information. One team can say he's good to go and another team can flunk him.
Yeah. Okay. Another question here, and it comes from, where's my guy here? Florida Bears fan. Although if no one drops to us at 10, does Greg think we go defensive line? And well, it's best player available, right, Greg?
Yeah, but I think that chances are it's a defensive lineman. High, assuming even if they trade down, I think defensive line.
Would you?
Membo would be the only one if he was there that would. But I'm starting to hear Membo in the top 6 or 7 too. So you know, Who knows?
Would you pick Mikel Williams, the edge out of Georgia, 6'5", 260 pounds, over any other defensive tackle that might be available outside of Mason Graham, because he'll probably go in the top 6 or 7?
Yeah, it's an interesting name because 3 different people today, 2 I've seen. One was Peter Schrager, who's got some. He says, "Here's the name that's going to go a lot higher than people think, Mikel Williams."
Yes.
And somebody else had it, and then a phone call I had this morning said the same thing. Don't be surprised if he goes 10 to 15. And he didn't run as good a 40 as he thought. He thought he was going to run in the 4.6s. He ran 4.75. He had a chance to run again last week. He didn't run, but he did do drills, and I guess he was pretty impressive doing the drills. He's got a perfect DE body.
He does.
So, and he coming from a school that has a history of producing pretty darn good defensive linemen in the league in recent years. So, yeah, I mean it's a very valid point. The thing is, did he visit? Did they go down to visit him? Did they do a Zoom call?
We don't know.
I know. I know there's one person that, and I'm trying to get a second person verification, but according to one person, so I won't mention the name until I get a second verification. There's one person that people have said the Bears had a private workout with, which according to one person who talked to this person, no, they didn't. So, but until I get a second verification, I'm not going to say who it is or, anything else, because I don't want to put out false information.
We've got Mikel Williams highlights in arm length on the screen. 34 3/8 arm length. That's pretty nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's 260, and he could probably be 275 in a heartbeat because he's lean, and he's really athletic. He just, you would have wished that he ran a 4.65, 4.67. But you know who ran slow that are really good pass rushers?
Who?
The Bosa brothers.
Oh, did they? But what about that first 10 yards, that split?
Well, I don't know what Mikel's 10 was. I got to look it up. But the Bosa brothers, one like ran in the high 4.6s, the other ran in the 4.7s. They weren't burners.
Interesting.
Hey, the leading sacker for a year in the season is Michael Strahan. Michael Strahan was 4.9.
Wow. Jeez. 4.9.
We took him in the second round.
Wow, what a steal. What a steal. All right.
Well, he went to Texas Southern.
Texas Southern. Do scouts go to Texas Southern?
I did. I saw him play. Texas Southern played their home games at Rice University.
Okay.
Which is really, they're
nice
almost
facility.
right next to each other in Houston.
Okay.
And I saw him play against Grambling at Rice.
That had to be a good game.
It is. I was on the field, and now I can't think of who I ended up. There was a boxer who was a big Grambling fan, professional boxer. I ended up, and now it wasn't Hitman Hearns. It was another guy, but he was there. He ended up standing next to me. But this was when Strahan was in his last year of college, so a long time ago. But I was with this boxer probably for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And he was a world champ guy. I just can't remember. I'm too old. I can't remember his name.
I don't remember his name either.
But he was still boxing then. I mean, he was still a fighter.
Geez, the name is.
And he wasn't a heavyweight. He was like a light heavy.
Anyone in the chat know the name? Flash it up there. Undeniably, Vic says, "Are there any day one starters that will be available at 10? Running back, yes. Edge, maybe.
Shit,
Defensive
You're
tackle,
just
yeah.
a blue.
Yep.
You're going to get day one starters in the second round. That's why that's why you want to get out of the 10 spot if you can, because you know you're going to get a day one starter in round 2 and probably round 3.
Yeah.
So if you can get a high, another high 3 or a late 2 or something, who's he barking at now? I don't know.
Somebody in a uniform, that's for sure.
Oh, somebody pulled up across the street. Let me set them up. Just hold on for a second.
You bet. And I'll add some texture to Undeniably Vic. Field Yates does the podcast with Mel Kiper on ESPN called First Draft. He says that there will be running backs available in the 5th round who could potentially be starters. That's how deep the running back class is. A lot depends, of course, on what your type of running back need is, but he predicted starters. And then I see defensive tackles definitely going into the 3rd round as potential starters. So there are going to be a lot of starters in this draft. Superstars, probably not. But I was saying to Undeniably Vic, Greg, that Field Yates says there's going to be starting running backs picked in the 5th round, defensive tackles in the 3rd, 4th round. Yeah, so it's a good draft. It really is a good draft. It's not
a good draft
as
for some positions.
Right.
I don't see a lot of number 1 receivers. See a lot of 2s and 3s. See a lot of top running backs. Bunch of starting defensive tackles, or at worst case, they're playing in the. Everybody plays a rotation now. They're going to be getting 40-50% of the snaps as rookies in the rotation. You got a ton. It's a good draft. It doesn't have the top end quality, but actually compared to last year, it was loaded up at the top. But then as you got further down, it got a little weaker. This is where last year's was weak. This year is strong.
That's good. Great thing to have. If you're a general manager, you're licking your lips. For Cheesy, thank you very much for Cheesy. And he is asking about LSU defensive end.
I like the other LSU defensive end.
Savion Jones. Who's the other defensive end for LSU? Help us out, chat. Names don't come as quickly to us as they used to.
I take him. I don't think I'd take him as high as 41, but if I had a later 2, I would. I'll get it just a second here.
And so this other LSU defensive end, I'm looking it up too.
No, I'll have it in a second here.
Well, let's see if I can beat you to it. I can't.
Braden Swinson.
Oh, yes, of course. Braden Swinson is a dog. He is.
I take Braden Swinson. I like Braden Swinson a lot.
But Savion Jones is getting a lot of love. I'm trying to find what it was that, here it is. It is Lance Zierlein, who was a guest on this show just a few weeks ago, says he will eventually be a plus starter. And some of the strengths is that he's tough and physical. He's relentless. He locates runners and works around blocks and tackles. He's got a big-time motor. His weakness is that he does need to improve in certain areas like avoiding punches, and he has below-average recognition on inside rush opportunities. Several other things. Check Lance out at NFL.com. He was a guest here on the show. I think you can't go wrong with any of these 2 LSU, but I do like Brady Swinson a lot. I'm with you there, Greg. Totally with you. All right, let's get to some other questions here. We have from Kay. Greg, if they draft a defensive tackle, would that mean they're moving on from Zach Pickens? I think Zach Pickens is on a short leash. What do you think?
I agree. You're not. You got too high a pick on him to throw in the towel. He was hurt part of last year, but when he was healthy, he had his flashes. He didn't take the second-year step that you expect a guy to take, where the other guy did, and so it's he's got to lack of a better term, shit or get off the pot.
Mm-hmm. This is it, man. You got to do it. You got
And
to
the guy who stepped up, they gave up a fifth or sixth for him at the 53 cut. The Williams kid who had played for Flus, and he was with Cleveland then, but he had played for Flus in Indy. He ended up playing pretty good, and they re-signed him.
Yeah.
So, but they still need. I go on what Johnson said, that opening presser. When Billings was out, there's a noticeable drop off, and that means they need another anchor, another tough defensive tackle.
They do. They definitely do. And there's some good ones in this draft. All right, let's go to Squeegee. He's wondering, do you think the Kelvin Banks hype is to get teams like San Francisco, Miami, and a couple of other teams between
I
10
think
and
that's
20
fan hype, not necessarily Bears hype.
Oh.
Okay. I mean, you look at, I was putting this on yesterday. Dane had him at 26.
Right.
DJ has him at 31. Mel has him in the 20s. Nobody has them up that high. DJ then, did a presser, like a pre-draft presser. I think it was Friday.
Yeah.
And he said he talked to a lot of teams, and only one team had them up higher than the rest. It only takes one now. Now, he didn't say whether that team has a need. Didn't say who the team was, and nor would he. And he didn't say if that team had a need at tackle, nor would he. But there's a lot of people, including me, and Dane said it also, and he says it in his write-up, that he's going to be better off at guard. And I believe that. He's on the ground a lot. He's Jalen Walker, who was 243 pounds, just killed him in I think it was the SEC championship game. And
yeah, that was the big indicator that maybe this guy's not as good as a lot of people have been saying.
I was having a conversation with one guy on X the other day, and he said, "Well, he's number 8th ranked player going into the year." I said, "Throw out all those going into the year ratings out the window. They mean nothing."
My man Maddie with another $2 donation. Thank you, Maddie. Really appreciate it. He's wondering what linebacker fits the Dennis Allen defense. Would you grab for Dennis Allen if he told you? Because
I don't know enough about this. Like I knew Flus's D because it was our D. I don't know enough about this one. I know. I mean, Poles flat out told me we need more speed. By the way, I'll tell the story. Baldy puts out this thing the other day. It's linebacker from the University of Buffalo. Does
your guy.
like five plays out of which, and I love this player.
Yeah,
non-combine guy, and I had done him, and he ended up having a great pro day. I thought he was going to run 4.75, and he runs like 4.61 or something. And the media in Buffalo is saying some people had him in the 4.5s, which may be true, but. So I sent Ryan a text. I said, I don't know if you got any stuff on this guy. I said, really like him. His workout across the board was fantastic. Led the country in tackles, led the nation in tackles. Had like 159 or 169 tackles, 4 interceptions, 5 sacks. I mean, for an inside linebacker, 5 sacks.
Right.
So all he does is make plays. And so Baldy has him, and I said, "Oh, Baldy, I'm glad you did that because I really like the guy." And he goes, "I like him. Like, who's the Will linebacker for Buffalo?" He compares him to the Will linebacker at Buffalo, was hurt most of last year. And I said, "Well, that guy runs a lot faster." But Ryan said when in that text, he said he's going to take a look, but he goes, "We're looking for speed at that position."
Sean Dolak is the name of
Yeah,
the
Sean.
linebacker from
But
Buffalo.
where's he going to go? 7th round, 6th round, because he was a non-combine guy, and people are getting on him late. Ballard called me. Goes, you know about this guy? Because he got, you get the. I sent it to you, the APT
Yes.
chart with all the workouts.
Right.
And they get that stuff, and so he's a guy that Buffalo really didn't have anybody going into the season, and he goes, oh, this guy had a workout, and I said, Chris, he's a freaking tackling machine. And I had written a report, for an agent, so I sent it to Chris, and we'll see. Again, non-combine guys usually go late. Sometimes the guy will sneak up into the 3rd round, but they got to be really special that they, the combine just screwed up not inviting the guy. But this guy just makes a shitload of plays. Really good football player. And his teammate from the year before, Joe Andreessen, made Buffalo's 53 this past year. And Andreessen isn't 1/10 the football player Dolak is.
One of the fastest linebackers at the combine was Sean Martin, who is probably a late day 3 pick, has made a top 30 visit with the Chicago Bears. He ran a 4.88. Is that good? Actually, that's defensive.
No, that's slow. 4.88.
That's
not a
defensive
linebacker. He's a defensive lineman.
Yeah,
93.
my apologies. What I meant was Barrett Carter. That's the guy I meant. Out of Clemson, 6 feet, 231 pounds. He did not run the 40 at the combine, but at his pro day, he ran a 4.63. Barrett Carter out of Clemson. That's the kind of speed that perhaps they're looking for at linebacker.
And perhaps even in the 4.5s.
Oh, yeah. Nice, man. If you can get a linebacker to 4.5s, do it.
All except for Lance Briggs, all our linebackers were fast back then. Lance just played fast.
Very instinctive.
I take that back because we picked up Hunter on waivers. Hunter was like a 4.65.
Oh, okay.
Type guy.
Hunter Hillenmeyer. All right, more questions here. Donald asks, if the Bears draft a running back in the 1st round, what would Greg think if will be the positions that the Bears target in round 2? Seems like we've answered that one already.
Offensive line and defensive line.
Interior. Absolutely.
Well, a defensive line, it could go either. Who's there? Which guy? And again, I think we can have a better discussion on that Friday morning.
Okay.
Because we're going to know what 32 are gone. And then you're saying, okay, we got 7 and 9. And here's the thing. The best picks to have in any draft are a high pick in the 2nd and a high pick in the 4th. Yeah. Why is that? Because people are re-looking at their board. They've had all night to look at it. They come in the morning. Draft doesn't start till Friday night, and they're looking at that thing, and then a guy's going to jump out. And you have a bunch of trades in the top 6, 7 of the 2nd round, and same with the 4th round. I'll give you one example. We made some trades in the 4th round, but generally our 4th round picks were really good. Nate Vasher, Brown, a few others. I mean, our 4th, Todd Johnson, we had some really good 4th round picks. Kyle Orton was a 4th rounder. But the year we took the corner, Nate Vasher, so I think we were picking 9th, 8th, something like that.
Okay.
And we put up the cards of 6 guys. We want one of these guys. We'll take any of them. Nate was one of those. Now the fourth round starts. Boom, 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 boom. All of them went. There was only one left. Nate.
That's wild. Oh gosh, that's gonna be heartbreaking.
Oh, then it was like, what the fuck? We're not gonna have a guy. You know? And the guy we got went to the Pro Bowl. So
how about it? Very nice. Samo wants to know, what does Greg make of the fact that the Bears have not brought in many edge rushers for their top 30 visits? I've only seen Shamar
don't mention Shamar Stewart to me.
You're not a fan, huh?
No, hey, if he had production, I'd be a fan.
Yeah, it seems like he's always like a microsecond too late to get his sack or
I'm big on production.
Yeah.
Now, if you take him in the second round, different story, because you're going with the traits and stuff. But God, in the first round, when he had 4.5 sacks in his career, and never more than 1.5 sacks in any year, and this guy's a pass rusher. Somebody said, well, it was the defense they played. They only played that defense last year. The year before, they weren't playing that defense. And he only had 1.5 sacks. And the year before that, 1.5 sacks.
Interesting. So
what's a pass rusher who can't rush the passer?
Yeah, he's the answer to the question is he is a bust. All right, let's get to another one.
And anyway, I think they signed that guy in free agency in O'Day.
Oh, okay.
That type of guy.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
Bigger guy, athletic as hell.
Oracle of Halle says, asks, do head coaches make a shopping list of players they need for their scheme and deep dive into their draft so they can focus their time and attention on the most critical players?
No, I mean, the coach is there when they're going through all these meetings. You know, and generally you do it by position. So you'd have the coordinator and the position coaches in there, and you're going through and stacking the players. Head coaches in there for almost all of them. They're getting their say. And I'm sure that he's, said, I'd really like to have this player. You know, what you, even though a coach, let's say, let me put it this way. The guy's the 23rd player on the board and they're at 10. I really like this player, and polls would probably say 99 times out of 100 tough shit. Look at how many other players are ahead of him, so it's that. I mean, that's why there's a separation of power.
It's worked well for many teams that way. It does make a lot of sense.
And we used to say, because Lovey would have love affairs, and we just say, if we get to him, Lovey, we get to him. But you got to take him at the right spot.
Right. What you shared that quote, I think, from Bill Parcells, and somebody had it up in the chat earlier, is what Bill Parcells says.
Draft exceptions, you'll have a team full of exceptions.
No, not that one about you're asking me to cook with these players. Why don't I have, and I'm ruining the quote. Why don't I have a say?
Why can't I shop for the groceries if I got to do the cooking?
There you go. So, I mean, that could be Ben Johnson's philosophy. He's told Ryan Poles,
Well, but okay, now there's a difference, and it's a good question. When I started working for the Giants, after I worked for the Bills, the assistant coaches didn't do anything. They were just starting to get involved with maybe working out a guy or going out. Cincinnati more than anybody else, because Cincinnati didn't have any scouts, so their coaches did all the scouting. And they literally had no scouts. So their coaches would start on the scouting in January. But more and more coaches started to get involved. Bill, I'm not going to say he watched film, but he'd make a lot of calls. Now, this is when I was with him. And then as time went on, he started doing more stuff, and we'd send some coaches out. I was with Bill for, 7-8 years in New York. But never did he he had input, but not like anywhere close to final say. We had good teams. I mean, we went to 2 Super Bowls with Bill and won both of them. So, but George Young had final say. And the coaches had zero input in setting the board. That's not the case now. The coaches have input. They write reports just like the scouts do. They're just not writing reports until the spring. What you got to be careful of is that you got to know how good an evaluator each individual coach is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a couple of years to find that out.
Yeah.
Some coaches don't like, they want to coach. They don't want to scout.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find that out. And so they'll call their friends. What do you think of this guy? What do you think of this guy? And, you've caught it happen. And I'll tell a story. I might have told this once before. And the coach is Jim McNally. He's a good friend of mine, one of the great offensive line coaches of all time.
Uh-huh.
So I'm at a Penn State pro day, and they had a big tackle that went in the first round. Can't think of his name. Right tackle. Just took him in the first round. And I'm with Paul Alexander, who was with the Bengals. He was the Bengals offensive line coach. So he's doing all the scouting for the offensive line for the Bengals. So the next day was a pro day at Michigan. So a bunch of us went from Penn State to Michigan, and Paul and I were on the same puddle jumper plane from State College, Pennsylvania to Detroit. And there was probably, a little plane, there was probably only 15 on the plane, and Paul and I are talking the whole way. So he's talking about this player, about what he can do, what he can't do. And there's one thing about his hips, and he puts his hand on his hip and he says, he can't do this, and blah, blah. So now, fast forward, we're in meetings in New York. And McNally starts talking about a player. And it was now McNally didn't go out. It was word for word, that discussion I had with Paul Alexander on the plane.
Wow.
And I just started laughing. And Tom Boysher, my boss, says, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Because that's not McNally's report. That's Paul Alexander's." And McNally just started laughing, as like, caught me,
Caught me. I love it. Moving on, J2K is interested. Do you have any idea who could trade back? Who could trade back with in the first round? I'm thinking Colts will need a tight end, and Pittsburgh will needs a quarterback.
You got to look at teams that have picks too. Seattle's got picks,
Mm-hmm.
so Seattle might be
got a lot of picks,
willing to move.
Yeah,
so it's hard to pinpoint, because these things. You're in these meetings now, and you're starting to build a strategy for Thursday, and then you get into the draft and you see how it falls, and then teams go, "Wait a minute, I got a chance of getting this guy, but he isn't getting to me at 18 or wherever Seattle's at." Chicago.
Laz is thinking that perhaps we are giving Ryan Post too much credit here, and that he really hasn't had any big hits in the draft. I'm paraphrasing what Laz has said, but
he's free to have that.
He adds here, he has totally failed in most of his coaching hires and hasn't had any big hits in the draft. Your thoughts?
I disagree.
What do you think?
He hasn't had a Pro Bowler yet, but in my first few drafts, I didn't have a Pro Bowler, but even though some of them became Pro Bowlers a little later,
right?
So give it time. I'm going to say this. First of all, he did not hire Flus, no matter what the narrative is. Bill Polian, that was Bill Polian's guy. And the general manager does not hire the assistants. The head coach does. Just like the head coach has no say in the scouts that Ryan Poles hires. The general manager doesn't have say. He can have some input and say what he thinks about this coach, or like they got Bieniemy, and he's worked with Bieniemy, so he's going to give his opinion about Bieniemy, being that he worked with him for so long. But the coach, it's part of their contract. Coach has final say of his staff. The general manager has final say of the draft and final say of the 53-man roster.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, in saying this, I said it a lot. You never want to shove a player down a coach's throat.
Right.
If the coach is adamant he doesn't want a player, you don't take him. It's real simple, because that player will fail.
Yeah, you'd be an idiot to go against your coach's ardent wishes. If he
generally
passionately
speaking,
is saying,
I mean, you get in the thing, and there's common ground. This is what the meetings are for. You come up with guys. These are guys we want, and the consensus in the room is, yeah, we want this guy.
now you shared the story before that when Lovie Smith came on board, you had Lance Briggs, who had his rookie year before Smith joined the team as head coach, and Lovie was questioning whether Briggs could play.
All they had was, I had the depth chart on my sideboard in my office, and so he's in there. Jerry and I and Lovie are looking. We're going over the team, and he sees Lance's card. And he sees 4-7-8, and he goes, Jerry, I don't know if I can. That's too slow for that Will linebacker spot. And we both said, Lovey, give it a little time. He plays 4-5-5. Take that speed and throw it away. He's got, and which he found out real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to. D. Starren has, and I have to confirm this, but he's writing here. No general manager has drafted a Pro Bowler in the last 3 years. I don't know if that's accurate, but if true, that's further supports, the contention that Poles is drafting potential Pro Bowlers, and for us to expect a draft pick. Well, no, Kyler Gordon is Pro Bowl quality. And that was his first draft pick. Jaquan Brisker could be Pro Bowl quality, but injuries have.
Well, Jalen Johnson is, but he didn't draft Jalen Johnson.
Right. So
no, there's guys that they have that could become. He traded for DJ. DJ's a Pro Bowler. That's part of the equation.
Right. Right.
Okay. Rome has the ability to become a Pro Bowler. Okay. We drafted 12. That's that's my standard. Well, we did 12. You got to come up with, so, and some of them were late. So what?
That's interesting. All right, we got a bunch more questions. We could stay on that topic for another 30 minutes, but I'm going to move on here. We've got some questions.
Corey Graham was a 6th rounder. He went to the Pro Bowler.
Wow. There you go. It happens. And so, I've been an ardent critic of Ryan Poles, but the reset button has been hit. He did the right thing in bringing in Ben Johnson. He should have maybe acted earlier on Eberflus, but that's water under the bridge now. J2K says,
let's continue on that just for a second.
Okay.
Would Ben Johnson be, if he got rid of Flus a year ago, would Ben Johnson be the coach today?
Nope.
No.
He wouldn't. Nope.
Because he didn't want to be a head coach a year ago. He made that decision. He turned down the Washington. Washington was in a plane flying there. No. And so, it worked out for the better.
Yeah. Now, who were the head coach hires in 2024 that could have been a replacement for Flus? Let's look at it. I'm hitting Google now to see. And it's Raheem Morris, Mike McDonald, Jim Harbaugh, your favorite, Dave Canales, I like him, Jared Males, Brian Callahan. No, he was hired in the middle of the season. So I think Ben Johnson is probably going to be a better head coach than any one of those guys. But I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Mr. Shorty says, I guarantee you all, George put a stop to firing Eberflus before last season.
I don't agree with that.
Tell us why.
Because that's not something George does. You know, you don't forget, you're talking to a guy that worked with George for, 9.5 years, almost 10 years. I know the guy well. I know how he thinks. And that's, you cut players with a lot of money left on a contract. He's not about to, if the coach ain't the right guy, he's not going to say no.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right. Mr. Englewood wants to know, is it true that Randy Moss was taken off of the Bears draft board because he disrespected Walter Payton? Have you ever heard that story?
I have no idea. I wasn't here.
Yeah. It's a story that has floated around. I guess Walter Payton went to do a recruiting pitch for Randy, and Randy didn't show up. Something like that is what I heard.
I mean, coming out of, went to, I forgot where he went to
Marshall,
high school. He went to school at Marshall.
Right.
Okay. And, but I think he started out, if I'm not mistaken, at Florida State or someplace. And he, he was a handful early on.
Yeah, he was.
And, matured like a lot of guys do. I was with the Giants at the time. We used to do this CPI test with everybody, and if you didn't do the test, we wouldn't draft you. It was a personality profile test, and it took a long time to do, like a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to do it. And if you recall his draft, he didn't go till like 20 or something like that. You might want to look up the exact pick, but
I'm pretty sure you're correct. It was 20.
It might have been 19, something like that. But he was a top 5 quality.
21st.
Okay. Top, his talent was way up there.
Phenomenal.
And we're joking in the in our draft room in New York. I wonder if he wants to take that test now. So, we can give it to him over the phone.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right, we got more questions. Let's try to get these so that we don't bypass that 2-hour mark. Get back to J2's question about Jahdae Barron out of Texas, the cornerback. He was a top 30 visit, reportedly. Can you see Poles really considering him a cornerback, Barron from Texas at 10?
I'll be honest. I haven't done jack shiite on
corners. Yeah.
Corners, because I don't see it as a big need. There's a lot of reasons why you might bring in a guy.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen that name, so I'll check in. I'm not saying he didn't do a 30 visit. I just personally haven't seen that name until he just put it right now. But I know for a fact that some of the names aren't there. Didn't make visits.
Yeah, it's funny. Every year, there are certain positions I just don't bother to do any research on because I just don't foresee the Bears doing it. And once in a while, I regret it.
Well, I think that more so this year than any other year so far with him.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff's been under lock and key. We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff I know because I deal with the agents.
Mm-hmm. So you get that info. All right, let me get back to Bear Miniman's question. Greg, what GM and scouting department does he look at? Do you, Greg, look at in our division and you like the work that they're doing, their draft philosophy, who they're picking, blah, blah, blah. I think it has to start with Detroit, right? Brad Holmes has done a phenomenal job.
He's done it. I mean, I don't really know Brad. I know Spielman, who is, and I guess in a way higher than, but I'm going to answer it a little different way. The two best in the league, in my opinion, are Baltimore and Philly, and have been for a long time. Howie might not be the greatest evaluator himself, but he gets great people working for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he got really good instincts for it. Baltimore, the same people have been there for the last, between and Ozzy's still there, in an advisory role, but Eric DaCosta, they've had the same people there forever. And, they've trained good people. DJ, Daniel Jeremiah, started off at Baltimore and went to Philly. He worked for two really good
Two
people.
of the best. Yeah.
Okay. The same thing with our assistant GM, Baltimore and Philly. Those
Ian
are
Cunningham.
the best. I think Gutekunst actually does a fairly good job up in Green Bay.
I would agree.
Nobody in this division does a bad job.
I agree with that as well. Yeah, the Vikings.
I don't think it's they've gotten players at all different areas that have come in and been contributors, but Detroit is hit with some key picks. Now they have the second pick in the draft when they took Hutchinson. I mean, that wasn't too hard to do.
Yeah. The Jared Goff trade was the master stroke because they received so many draft assets, and they thought that Goff was going to be a bridge quarterback, but instead he was proven to be one of the best quarterbacks, at least statistically, in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, the record speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's the toughest guy in the world, but the guy can throw the rock, and he throws it really, really well. And I think, what helped Goff was he got away from McVay, and it's saying nothing against McVay, but they weren't in the same zip code. So it was more McVay not believing in Goff, and so it just made the relationship difficult. So McVay wanted a change.
Okay. Let's see. What do we got here? A little wasted. Is there a defensive back that could possibly be the pick at 10? So Greg,
I don't
done.
see it. And people say Will Johnson, and I'll just say this: Will Johnson. First of all, he hasn't run, and there's two positions that are stopwatch-driven positions: corner and wide receiver. And so you don't have a speed. He missed a good part of the 25 season. He's got hamstring issues often. And that's one of the reasons why it had nothing to do with why he was hurt during the fall, but it creeped up this spring and why he didn't work out at the combine and why he only did position stuff a week and a half ago at Michigan. So, to me, at that position, that's a red flag. I don't want a slow guy. I want to know what I'm buying. But I'm saying that for me. But I want to know what I'm buying at that position.
I'm the same way. I want to know too. Rick Saviano wants to know your thoughts on Derek Harmon possibly at 10 if no team presents a good trade up scenario to number 10 and Derek Harmon is on the board.
It wouldn't shock me at all.
I would not be shocked too.
And
Rick.
He's starting to grow on me more and more. In fact, I had Grant in front of him, and now I got Harmon in front of Grant. Only because of what they are today. I still think Grant 4 years from now might be the better player, but Harmon is pretty darn good now. And then when you think about some of the intangibles, and this one is big to me with him. This guy was like 375 pounds when he came out of high school going to Michigan State.
Wow.
And he had the wherewithal to get down to where he had to be. And now his body doesn't look that great still, and that's probably because he was so damn big when he was younger. But he ran faster than a 5 flat at like 320 pounds or something like that. That's moving for a big guy like that. and he is strong. I really liked his tape from a year ago at Michigan State, and then he does the same stuff up at Oregon, playing a little different role. He can rush the passer. He's strong. He can be that anchor. Not only can he be an anchor, he can rush the passer from the interior. The guy's a good football player.
Good stuff. Okay. TJ wanted to know your thoughts on the edge from UCLA, and his name is Oluwafemi Oladejo. I think I nailed that one.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot. I mean, he's a guy, he's only been a 1-year edge. He was an off-the-ball linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they had the kid last year the Colts took in the first round, who was their big edge rusher, and this guy got moved to that position for this year. And, had pretty good success, went to the Senior Bowl, had a good Senior Bowl week. I think the high side is later part of the second, probably a third, but it wouldn't shock me if he went in the fourth because he's really only 1 year at that position. He's not a big guy. He's like 245. But he had production for only playing the position 1 year.
Oluwafemi Oladejo, I got him at 260, Greg, 33 3/8-inch arms. So he's
he was a little heavier than I thought he was. But he was, he was an off-the-ball linebacker in 23. And what was the defensive end? I loved the guy, too. The Colts took in the first round.
Last year?
Asian kid. Last year.
Latu.
And he took Latu's spot in the they moved him to be the big pass rusher for UCLA.
Well, we got great people in the chat just helping me out hosting this show. J2K wants to know your thoughts on Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. You know what, Greg? I like this guy a lot. I'm a little worried about the discipline issues that he's had. Your thoughts?
A little undersized, very athletic. It's weird. He's not a starter.
Yeah,
but he plays a lot. So, and he's disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of a, to use last year's defense, because I don't know exactly how they're going to use the tackles this year. He's more of a 3 than a 1. In fact, he is a 3 in last year's scheme. He might max out at 305. Like him, don't love him. There's other guys I'd rather have. Then the big question and the scouting department would know, why wasn't he a starter?
Mm-hmm. All right. Yep. Well, and I wonder if some of the disciplinary issues cost him snaps. I know that I won't say it because I don't remember it exactly, but there were some instances where he was just out of control from a discipline standpoint, got into fights during games and stuff like that. So he is a savage, and as Greg loves to say, I'm not looking for model citizens on my defensive line.
I don't want an altar boy.
Yeah, Norman Lott, I don't think it's an altar boy.
I don't want an altar boy. Definition, I'll say it again. What's the definition of a defensive lineman? 1 4-letter word: thug.
Oh man, I love it. Tony is wondering, can we trade Terrell Edmonds for a player? Because nobody would give us a pick for him.
Right now, you're running low on money.
Yeah,
and don't forget, throw out. You got a new scheme.
Mm-hmm.
If these guys didn't really win out, part of it's the money. You can't get rid of them yet. You can next year, but. In this scheme, I just didn't think he was a great fit.
In Eberflus's scheme,
yes.
Yeah.
We'll see. He's got. If he doesn't play well this year, I've seen the guy play really well in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And that's why he got the money he got. And I interviewed this kid down in Dallas for this one thing. It was an ESPN thing. In fact, Dusty Dvorak was doing it. I can't forget what the name of the show was. They don't have it anymore, but they had like a lot of the top players doing all these different kind of skills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a made-for-TV thing. And he was down there, and, you know, I had an interview for the thing I was doing, like 8 players, and he was one of the 8 I interviewed. Just a great, great kid. Orlando Brown was there. The tight end from the Ravens that's real good was a teammate of Orlando Brown's at Oklahoma. He was there. I mean, there's good football players there.
I'll tell you what, somebody regarding Tremaine Edmonds, Chris says, first of all, that he struggled because of the Billings injury. So he had an offensive line at the second level getting to him. And that's a good point. There was nobody on that defensive line by the middle of the season who was really doing their job at not allowing offensive linemen to get to that second level. And Kay adds that Tremaine Edmonds is making $7 million less this year, so he might be a good value. So I just took a look at it.
I can get it over.
I have it on the screen. There is a potential out after this season.
But not this year.
Correct. So this is really a contract year for Tremaine Edmonds, and we know that players tend to pick up their game, and this coaching staff is really very, very demanding. I got a feeling
the linebacker coach they got, the older guy,
yeah,
can't think of his name, and his kid was the defensive line coach last year. Guy is a well-respected, highly regarded linebacker coach.
I'm trying to look his name up.
He's almost as old as me. They got a few old guys like me on this staff.
You guys can still kick it. You guys can still kick it. That is for sure. All right, let me see. We know Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, Declan, Richard Hightower. All right, linebackers coach. I'm scrolling down, and probably somebody in the chat already has it, but I want to do this. I'm not seeing it. Not seeing it. It's not Kenny Norton. No, he's Richard Smith. Richard Smith. Yeah. Thank you, Chad.
His son was Fluce's defensive line coach.
Look at that! Holy cow! It's such an incestuous league. All right, let me get a couple more out of here, and then we'll get out of here.
We're overtime today, bro.
Yeah, we are. Well, it's a big week. I love this question. Take us back, Greg, to the time that Aaron Rodgers dropped back to the past 19. It was a total surprise at the time. Did the Chicago Bears, did you and Jerry Angelo consider moving up for him?
No.
You guys did talk to him at the combine. At 10 p.m. when you guys are packing stuff up, here walks in Aaron Rodgers.
He walked in, and he was great. He sat there like this. I remember it like it was yesterday, and we talked to him for at least a half hour. And wasn't the asshole he is now, but he went 23rd, something like that. 22nd, and a lot of people thought he was going in the top 5, and then it was like, is there something wrong with this guy? Does he got AIDS? Why?
There were rumors.
And but we had taken Rex the year before. I remember at that time Rex was a darling in Chicago.
Absolutely,
the way he played the end of his rookie year, and so no, we weren't going to take him.
Yeah. Do you think he might have just shown up to entice you into taking him? Because you guys had a top 10 draft.
He flat first thing out of his mouth. I know you guys aren't interested, but I want to talk to you anyway. That was
cool. That was cool. What happened to the cool Aaron Rodgers? Maybe he's just a good actor. All right, let me see if I got one last good one. I think that was the last good one. Let us close the show, but let me remind you, you're going to get a lot more Greg Gabriel this week. He is on Friday going to appear twice, in the morning with me and then in the afternoon with Swifty. Is that correct, Greg?
10 Friday with you, 12 o'clock Swifty.
Excellent. And then on Saturday, he and I will get together at 9 a.m. in the morning so he can review what has happened and give us an inkling as to what he thinks might happen on day 3.
At that point, right now, there's no fourth. Maybe by then there'll be a fourth, but there's not right now.
Yeah. Okay. I got a feeling they're going to get into that 4th round, although I don't think it's urgent that they do, but maybe I'll take that back. Maybe it is, because after the 4th round, there will be a drop off in talent. So maybe if they can somehow get into the 4th, but they are missing a couple of draft picks from the 2026 NFL draft, which is going to make things a little harder, right?
No, say that again.
In 2026, they've already traded away 2 of their picks, so that makes it a little harder to make a trade.
Yeah, but they traded away a 4. Yeah, 4.
Yeah.
So they still got 1, 2, and 3. Those are the important ones.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, 4s they're all important, but 1, 2, and 3 are important, and they could be trading guys that are on this roster and get something for them. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's an interesting notion. The other thing that I would like to tell fans, Greg, is that we have 2 second-round picks, so that's better than having a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, no, you're getting and 2 high second-round picks.
Yes,
7th and 9th pick of the second round.
Right. I mean,
there will be people that want one of those picks.
Greg, what's the most draft picks you've ever had in a draft? I mean, you go back
most
to
we had here was a dozen.
Wow. How cool is that? What about because you were in the business when the draft had how many rounds? 10, 12, 11, 12? 12? So did you have more than 12 when you were in New York?
Don't, that's going back to
a
long time ago. I don't recall having. Well, wait a minute. I take that back. In the 1986 draft, we went to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
We had 4 2s.
Ooh, look at that. Oh, my gosh.
We had a home run with 3 of them.
Can you remember the names?
Yeah. There's Pepper Johnson.
Pepper?
Was Mark Collins, a corner.
Collins was a very good corner.
Another Pro Bowl player. And what the hell? I can't think of the name of our he was another nose tackle who was also a Pro Bowler or at least an alternate. He backed up Jimmy Burt and played in rotation with Jimmy Burt, played at Washington State. He was the 3rd guy. I don't remember the order. I think Pepper was the first one we took. And then the 4th was a safety out of Arkansas named Lasker. And, he was okay, but he was just a guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we got, Eric Dorsey was our first pick. So the first pick and then the top 3 of the 4 2s were all became starters and played a lot as rookies. Like Pepper was a starter from day one.
Mm-hmm. So this was the 86 draft?
86 draft.
Let me see if I can find it here. All of the players drafted. All right. So in the 2nd round, the New York Football Giants drafted Mark Collins.
Mark Collins, the corner out of Fresno.
Mark Collins out of Cal State Fullerton.
Well, that's right. They don't even play football anymore.
Yeah. Greg Lasker.
Lasker was the safety out of Arkansas. He was the guy that didn't play up to potential. Eric Howard was the defensive lineman from Washington State.
All right.
And Pepper Johnson.
All right. So I'm only seeing 2 picks in the 2nd round.
No, we had 4.
Eric Howard, Mark Collins,
Lasker.
Lasker's 3, so I'm wrong. And then the 4th one, I don't see it here. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. So anyway.
Lasker, Howard, Pepper Johnson, Collins.
Was Pepper his nickname or did his mama name him Pepper?
I don't know, just Johnson, Ohio State linebacker.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So lots of coverage with Greg. And then beyond that, Danny Shimon and I are going to be gracing your airwaves here on Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night. We're going to have some special guests on, a lot of video roll-ins. So that should be fun draft coverage. And of course, again, Greg in the morning on Friday and Saturday. So Greg, a great job today. Overtime pay is in the mail. 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Check is in the mail. I won't.
There you go.
I won't continue. This is a good family.
We hope it is.
Show, right?
Anyway, we'll see you all real soon. Thank you, Greg, and thank you everybody in the chat, and thank you, Maddie, for the donations. Take care, everybody.
Thanks all. See you later.